twin-engine North American B-25 bomber performed one of the most daring and spectacular air raids in U.S. history. A sweetheart to the forces, it's one of the very few aircraft to have been flown simultaneously by the U.S. Army Air Corps, Navy, and Marine Corps. I remember waking up on a Saturday morning and watching a movie about Doolittle's raiders who'd taken off B-25s from aircraft carriers to go to Tokyo. I'm Paul Max Moga, and I've flown some of the most sophisticated planes ever built. I'm here at the Military Aviation Museum in Virginia Beach, Virginia, home to one of the largest private collections of restored warbirds in the world. On this episode of Great Planes, we'll learn the incredible story of the North American B-25 bomber.
Hi, my name is Don Anklin. I work for the Military Aviation Museum here in Virginia Beach. I'm Chief Test Pilot and Director of Restoration.
So Don, you were saying that this plane didn't quite make it to World War II, but what was it, a transport plane?
Well, they used it as a trainer at the end of World War II. North American took it back and made it into a trainer, and that's where it served its life until 53 or 54.
Nicknamed the B-25 Mitchell, it is the only military aircraft to be named after a specific person, aviation pioneer Billy Mitchell. Regarded in some circles as the father of the U.S. Air Force, Mitchell is one of the most famous figures in aviation history. 1918. Billy Mitchell plans and leads nearly 1,500 Allied aircraft in the air phase of the San Miguel offensive during World War I. During the offensive, American expeditionary forces and 48,000 French troops break through the German lines to refortify the city of Metz, France. Recognized as the top American combat airman of the war, Mitchell receives the Distinguished Service Cross, the Distinguished Service Medal, and several foreign decorations for his valor. Upon his return to the U.S., Mitchell is appointed Deputy Chief of the Air Service. Based on his experiences in the war, he sets out on a mission to convince the top military brass that future conflicts will be decided by who rules the skies, not just the land and the sea. But Mitchell is surrounded by skeptics. Despite considerable opposition to his vision of future wars, he orchestrates a simulation exercise called Project B. Using primitive biplanes, he attacks a captured German battleship by dropping bombs from the sky. The ship quickly sinks, proving Mitchell's point. A new age of air power has begun, but his skeptics are not convinced. Mitchell's stubborn promotion of air power is out of step with the prevailing moods of the time. Pushing his theory too far, Mitchell makes a series of public statements indicating that strategic bombing might reduce or even eliminate the need for ground forces. His vision will eventually cost him his career. While American military planners debate the effectiveness of air power, other nations quickly acknowledge the need and plan accordingly. A new age of aviation technology emerges. 1923. Benito Mussolini turns Italy's Royal Air Force into a modern war machine and breaks several military aircraft records. By the mid-1930s, Italy sends its bombers into the fray of the Spanish Civil War. Mussolini's support of the Nationalist rebellion increases tensions throughout Europe prior to World War II. The Italians developed the Savoia Marchetti SM-81, a three-engine monoplane with large aerodynamically shaped fixed main undercarriage gear.
Large wings having 3 spars and a robust undercarriage can operate from all types of terrain. It's surprisingly fast given the power of its engines and weight. The new plane shows its versatility by serving as a bomber, transport, and reconnaissance plane. In October of 1935, Mussolini uses his planes against Ethiopia with overwhelming results. Although Ethiopian forces are virtually defenseless, the incursion proves the effectiveness of aerial bombing against ground-based forces. This new show of air might convinces the U.S. to start formal aerial combat training in 1936. The aviation technology war rages on. Aircraft manufacturer North American Aviation commits their company to aircraft production and builds a state-of-the-art factory in Los Angeles. The temperate climate of Southern California allows for flying year-round. North American soon gets a reputation for building high-quality planes with sophisticated designs. New airframes with advanced features like a retracting undercarriage are used primarily for observation. Success follows in the shape of a series of single-engine basic trainers, which are used in a variety of roles by various countries' armed services. The company's first attempt to keep up with the trends in aerial attack is a twin-engine, long-range prototype bomber, the XB-21, developed in 1936. The North American XB-21 is introduced as an improved twin-engine bomber. Five service test models of the XB-21 are ordered as YB-21s, but the contract is canceled before any aircraft are built. In the 1960s, North American built the Apollo Command Service Module, one of 2 spacecrafts used by astronauts during NASA's Apollo program.
In 1935, the Italians re-emphasized the fact that military aircraft can be used for more than just reconnaissance. Their stunning bombing attack of Ethiopia sends shockwaves throughout the Western world. Afraid they are losing ground, the U.S. begins a concentrated push to develop new aircraft and tactics to combat the growing threat from the air.
North American Aviation's first attempt at a bomber is the XB-21. The XB-21 features a power nose and ventral turrets, with a single .30 caliber machine gun in each. It is capable of carrying a 10,000-pound bomb load for about 600 miles. The automated gun turrets with rapid-fire capabilities makes the XB-21 highly advanced compared to other planes of the time. By adding defensive firepower, it is believed that armed bombers won't need fighter escorts. A competitor, Douglas Aircraft, produces the B-18A, a comparable bomber at a much cheaper rate, and beats North American out of the contract. But the venture shows military decision makers that North American has the chops to compete in the aerial warfare arena. Undaunted by the failure of the XB-21, engineers at North American Aviation developed the NA-40. The NA-40's latest advancements include tricycle undercarriage, which is sturdy enough to support the plane during high-speed landings. While the design is superior to the failed XB-21, more improvements are needed. Tests show the NA-40 experiences severe tail shaking as its speed increases, and temperature levels on oil and cylinder heads are erratic. And time is running out for American aircraft designers. By the end of 1939, Europe is engulfed in a new war. the German Luftwaffe is poignantly demonstrating the overriding importance of air power. In the U.S., worried planners reflect on Billy Mitchell's prophecies, and the NA-40 is pushed through production with some minor changes. They want the wings lowered and the fuselage widened. Pattern makers prepare molds for the top of the engine. The addition of a scoop will force air into the carburetor of the powerful radial engines, which will drive the new North American design. Inside the factory, molten metal is poured as production of parts for the bomber commences in earnest. At the main fabrication shop, workers begin to assemble the fuselage on a jig, and slowly the plane's form starts to take shape. Early construction employs a great deal of hand skills and hard labor. At this stage of production, the planes are the product of the tradesman's individual skills. Most fabrication tasks are approached manually. A battery of tests follow. Designers remove the main support and add weight around the structure to test the design's resilience under stress. Thousands of pounds of lead ingots are fixed around, hung from, and placed within the aluminum frame to identify any weaknesses that may endanger the aircraft under combat stress. They test the plane's ditching ability by catapulting scale models into water. A flurry of activity surrounds the emergence of the new medium bomber, now officially dedicated and given its name, the North American B-25 Mitchell. The B-25 comes equipped with two Wright Cyclone air-cooled piston engines that deliver 1,700 horsepower each. These enable the Mitchell to reach a maximum speed of 272 miles per hour and gives it a climb rate of more than 1,600 feet per minute. A typical Mitchell crew consists of 6 men, 2 pilots, a navigator or bombardier, a turret gunner or engineer, a radio operator or waist gunner, and a tail gunner. Colonel William C. Billy Mitchell was court-martialed for insubordination in 1925 as a result of his outspoken views on the future of air power. He was ultimately vindicated and posthumously promoted to Major General in 1942.
The B-25 bomber is a direct response by North American to the U.S. military's request for bombers to compete against its European rivals already engaged in World War II. Early Mitchells are sent to Britain and immediately put through their paces against the Axis powers.
But the majority are ordered for U.S. Army Air Corps. The aircraft's light weight to lift ratio and the balance of the overall shape results in a package that is very easy to fly. It inspires great confidence and easy acceptance from the crews. North American aviation has a winner on its hands. But early analysis from the British suggests that the Mitchells are far too lightly armed. And, drawing on what they had learned from the XB-21 developments, North American installs new turrets, including one in the lower fuselage, which operates via periscope.
Well, what we got here is a tail gunner, which was a twin, 50 cal on a hydraulic seat, and he was able to sit back there with hydraulic controls, and he pretty much had a 270-degree view of the tail of the airplane. He was the tail protector. then you had the two waist guns, one on each side, and they were staggered a little bit in the fuselage so you could stand beside one another and shoot. And then you had the blister guns, which are two on each side, and then you've got, in this particular airplane, we got two forward-facing 50 cals in the nose, one that's man-operated and the other one is a fixed gun. And then we have the turret up there, which also has twin 50s in it, and that's a 360-degree view of the airplane.
That's a lot of guns. I would assume just by even looking at the blister guns that it'd be very difficult to use those in an air-to-air arena. Were they used for strafing too?
They're used for strafing, and they could lock down the front guns and turn the turret around, and you had all that stuff facing forward, and you could go down and make a mess of shipping, trains.
Yeah.
You could make a mess of a lot of stuff, convoys, and so they used them for kind of a close attack, ground support type issues.
So really multi-role in addition to be able to do in that medium to high altitude bombing. You can do strafing, you can do ground attack. So
you do just about all that stuff.
On December 7th, 1941, Japanese carrier forces launch a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. America is at war. It will take almost 6 months before the United States military will have its own carrier-based bomber force, made up of entirely newly modified B-25 Mitchells.
With the U.S. now fully committed to war, in Washington, President Roosevelt is keenly aware of the need to strike back at the Japanese homeland, specifically its capital of Tokyo. But because Japan is an island nation, officials believe that effective U.S. retaliation can only be achieved by medium bombers launched from a carrier deck. The raid has little chance of inflicting serious damage on the Japanese homeland, but its psychological impact is critical as the U.S. prepares for all-out war with Japan. The concept comes from a Navy submariner who saw twin-engine bombers being launched from a runway painted in the outline of a carrier deck in Norfolk, Virginia. But war planners must find the right plane for the job. They consider several designs, but none can meet the requirements: a cruising range of 2,400 miles and the ability to carry a 2,000-pound bomb load. Only the versatile Mitchell offers the ability to take off from such a confined area and travel the distance required. Early tests with B-25s indicate that it can be launched from a carrier, hit military targets in Japan, and fly on to land in China. Doolittle's first report on the plan suggests the bombers might land in the Soviet Union, shortening the trip by 600 miles, on the basis of turning over the B-25s on a Lend-Lease program. However, they are never able to make a deal with the Soviets because they didn't want to get into the war with Japan. The biggest challenge is launching the large bomber from the short deck of a carrier. For months, a hand-picked team of volunteer pilots are trained in short takeoffs from land bases. The B-25 is pushed to the limit.
Just standing around the B-25, it kind of gives you, it gives you chills to think about what this plane did back in World War II. Specifically when you think about that famous, Doolittle raid. Where these guys, tell me a little bit about what you know about the Doolittle raid. This thing took off from a carrier.
And it's, it wasn't ever designed to be a carrier airplane. It was designed to be a medium bomber. And what they did with this airplane throughout its history is unbelievable. But where it's made its real big claim to fame was the Doolittle raid. They took a B-25B, which is the earlier version of this particular airplane. And Jimmy Doolittle said, I know I can do this. He presented it to the President of the United States. He said, okay. This airplane can fly at a very slow speed. It'll actually rotate somewhere around 65. You can actually jerk it off.
65?
You can actually jerk it off the ground. You don't want anything to happen at that particular point in time, because if one engine quits or, you know, hydraulic failure on a particular thing, you're going. Your wheels won't come up. You're going in the drink.
Yeah.
And that was the philosophy. Jimmy Doolittle said, "This is what we're doing, and this is how it's going to happen. And if you wind up going in the drink, we're just going to keep on sailing, and we'll come and get back and get you after we got done getting everybody launched." They got lucky in one sense that the storm they were running through had a lot of wind in it, so they were able to have a lot more wind on their nose, so they were able to get the airplane off the ground. Jimmy Doolittle actually didn't go all the way to the end of the deck. He was actually airborne before he got to within 10 feet of the end of the deck. The last guy was a cakewalk.
But by the time the planes and crews embark on the aircraft carrier Hornet, there is confidence that the job can be successfully carried out.
What those guys did in this plane, to this day, I'm just befuddled by it. I can't imagine what those guys went through where they, number one, launched this thing off of a carrier, which it was never designed to do, knowing that they couldn't come back and land on it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no hook on this thing, so they could take off, and it was as far as the carrier was concerned, a one-way trip.
Exactly. It was a one-way trip.
So once you're airborne, you're going somewhere, but you ain't going back to the carrier.
Yeah. And if you're not going to make it to land, you're going to need a Mae West and a nice little raft.
On April 18, 1942, the Carrier Task Force carefully approaches Japan, commanded by Vice Admiral William Halsey. But while still short of the intended takeoff point, the U.S. Navy ships are sighted by Japanese fishing boats. The Japanese fishermen radio the Japanese Navy before the U.S. can sink them. With the element of surprise shattered, the decision is made to launch the raid early. The B-25s fly towards Japan in groups of 2 to 4 aircraft. When they get in range, they change to single-file formations at low altitude to avoid detection. The B-25s reach Japan about noon, just 6 hours after launch. They bomb 10 military and industrial targets in Tokyo, 2 in Yokohama, and 1 each in Yokosuka, Nagoya, Kobe, and Osaka. Some B-25s encounter light anti-aircraft fire and a few enemy fighters, but there is little opposition, and no bombers are shot down. 15 of the 16 aircraft then proceed southwest along the southern coast of Japan and across the East China Sea towards eastern China. Even though the raid itself was a victory, all of the planes are lost, ditching into the sea or crash landing. The attack on Tokyo cost several American lives. But the raid has 3 important effects. It shows the Japanese that their homeland is not invulnerable to attack. It forces Japan to tie up a considerable percentage of its military power in defense of its home shores. It provides a huge boost to U.S. morale. When asked where the planes came from, President Roosevelt replied, "Shangri-La." The raid displays the enormous courage of the crews that participated. And Doolittle, the leader of the raid in every sense of the word, is given the Congressional Medal of Honor by General Hap Arnold, Chief of Staff for the Air Force. General Arnold visits the North American Aviation Plant in Los Angeles, looks over the factory, and discusses the delivery of more B-25s. In fact, General Arnold was so impressed with the B-25 that he had his own, emblazoned with a badge on its side, identifying his rank and position. It is maintained as a transport to carry the general and his staff to various parts of the country at high speed. The mission's success makes production of the B-25 a matter of maximum priority. But like many coastal aircraft plants, the North American factory at Inglewood, California is considered a prime target for enemy assault. So elaborate camouflage is employed to hide the production lines. The plant cannot sustain the massive increase in production, so the Hollywood Park Racecourse is commandeered by the military effort. The idle grounds of the course are used to store components for the B-25's construction, while other areas are taken over with administration offices and sub-assembly workshops. Inglewood remains North American Aviation's main plant, rapidly becoming more automated as mass production techniques take over from the initial small-scale production. With a large percentage of the male population at war, North American Aviation employs large numbers of women to make the aircraft. As the demands of the military grow, the war effort gains momentum, and the daily output of the Mitchell increases with it. The Doolittle raid was immortalized in the 1944 film 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, with Spencer Tracy in the role of Jimmy Doolittle, and in the 2001 film Pearl Harbor, where the lieutenant colonel was portrayed by Alec Baldwin.
In the early days of World War II, the United States is pulled deeper and deeper into the conflict. The North American B-25 Mitchell distinguishes itself by becoming the first successful U.S. twin-engine bomber to launch from an aircraft carrier and carry out a crucial raid on Japan. The B-25 Mitchells are fast-tracked on the assembly line in an effort to keep up with the intensifying combat in the field.
Once they are ready for combat, the planes are dispatched to bases around the world. But the reality of war puts the B-25 to its ultimate test. They are thrust into action on virtually every battlefront of the war. Some are destroyed within weeks of production. The B-25s are used in North Africa to combat Axis powers in various areas during the North African campaign. The campaign includes operations in Libya, Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia. They fly missions against Germany's Africa Corps. They fly alongside B-24 Liberators and B-17 Flying Fortresses in a persistent bombardment of Axis positions that eventually forces Germany's evacuation. The medium-range, low-level missions require the bomber to run the gauntlet of enemy anti-aircraft fire without deviating from its course, so the bomb aimers can hit their targets. The bomber's support of the 1942 Operation Torch landings in North Africa plays a major role in the action. These are dangerous missions, and the cost to both men and machine is high. Mechanics work tirelessly to keep damaged B-25s flying. To compensate for shortages in parts, as the planes become damaged, they are cannibalized for reusable bits. Many times, two useless planes are grafted together to make a single airworthy B-25. The resulting aircraft serves as a testament to the effectiveness of the design and the creative ingenuity of the engineers on the bases. Similar ingenuity is displayed in Northern Australia. Engineers there make an unauthorized field modification to the standard B-25. They place added machine guns in the wings, just outside of the propeller arc. This modification creates another role for the Mitchell. By ignoring its specialization as a conventional bomber, they use it as a low-level ground attack weapon. They place guns in the nose and 2 or 4 more in blister packs under the cockpit.
So speaking of versatility, versatility was more than just putting different gas cans and gas tanks in there. A lot of it was with the armament, right?
Oh yeah, they did everything. I mean, you could see our particular airplane's got one fixed gun here, and you can fix that gun, or a guy can stand up there and shoot it and take it off the stand.
Like a turnaround.
Yeah, so he can whip it around in there. Then they turn around and say, well, another gun here. We got 2 on the side. They put another one in here, and then they turn around and put 2 more over here. And so they had, 4 more fixed guns in the nose. And then some guy got an idea that, well, we put a cannon in it.
Cannon?
And they literally put a cannon right in the side of the airplane, right up underneath the side, underneath the pilot seat, a 75 millimeter cannon.
75?
Yeah. So, I mean, you had a cannon in it, and then some of them put 20 millimeter cannons in it. And a lot of that stuff was done in the field, sent back to North America and said, hey, this is a good idea. So they started doing it themselves.
They did in the field and sent it back. Yeah. What are you doing on our airplanes?
I mean, the crew chiefs and the people that were in the fields back in those days, I mean, it's not like today. Back then, you had an idea, the commander liked it, let's do it.
Yeah.
And they brought their hammering and banging away, and they were doing it.
News of the success of these early flight modifications quickly gets back to engineers at the North American plant in Inglewood, California. At first, experiments are made with 2 additional 50 caliber machine guns located on the outside of the fuselage beside the pilot. The plane immediately gains in firepower. But the impact of the guns and the weight of the installation so close to the cockpit creates intense stress on the thin aluminum surface only inches from the pilot's seat. To compensate, heavy-duty plates are added to the design. 4 additional 50 caliber machine guns are mounted in the nose, providing the Mitchell with more forward firepower than many fighters. Later models of the B-25 have the dorsal turret move forward, where if needed, its 250 calibers can add to the plane's awesome barrage. But shifting the dorsal turret leaves the aft of the plane vulnerable.
That's what it sounds like. But an aircraft that you can actually do that to, that's what made it the plane that it was.
And when you stand here and look at this airplane now, you've got 6 guns pointed in your direction. You flip the turret around, you got 8 guns pointing in your direction. It's all 50 calibers. I don't think I'd want to be standing on the ground seeing this come after me.
Yeah.
To increase the plane's defenses, engineers equip the Mitchell with a proper tailgun position. Side protection is covered by single 50 calibers. To increase firepower, a single fixed cannon firing a 75 millimeter projectile is T-mounted directly below the pilot's seat, with a highly effective damper to absorb the recoil of the gun. The radio operator is given the task of reloading the cannon, 1 shell at a time, with the 14 rounds that are carried. Some aircrews claim that the impact of firing the gun is strong enough to stop the plane for a brief second in flight. With these modifications, the Mitchells, now used by all 3 services, are able to use firepower against naval targets that is unprecedented in its ferocity and its effectiveness. Tracers from the machine guns are used to adjust position to aim the plane before firing the cannon. The solid-nose Mitchells are so successful that the manufacturer's options continue in development, including individual kits that employ 8 50 calibers in a completely self-contained package. Individual commanders find themselves with manufacturer-provided options that let them tailor their armaments. With unprecedented firepower, the Mitchell soon finds itself leading the charge in some of the most dangerous combat of the war. The North American B-25 measured 52.92 feet long and 15.75 feet high, with a wingspan of 67.55 feet. The B-25 bomber etches its place in history by taking out Japanese military sites in the famous Doolittle raid of 1942.
You know, Don, something that I think some people might not know about the B-25 was the fact that it was used by different services. It wasn't just purely an Army Air Corps asset.
Yeah, exactly. No, the Marines used it and the Navy used it. I believe they called them PBJs. And they were basically the same airplane, they just painted them blue with white bottoms.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same airplane. They had the versatility, so they could do just about anything that was called upon to do, basically.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere from that medium altitude, medium range strike to the lower altitude strafing, which really speaks to the, like you said, the versatility of this airframe, you know, given the day that it was designed in.
Mitchells, in use by all three services, unleash attacks unprecedented in their ferocity and effectiveness. By adding various armaments and offering options for different military needs and theaters, the B-25 evolves into a low-range attacking weapon. The South Pacific becomes an ideal environment to debut this added forward firepower. The Japanese island strongholds don't need the saturating attention of heavy bombers like the industrialized centers of Europe. They require a more precise bomber, and the low flying capabilities of the B-25 provide the perfect tool. Mitchell crews patrol the Pacific Islands, either on planned strikes or simply looking for targets of opportunity. The bomber sweeps in on its targets at treetop height and accurately hits them. But the low-level flying has a cost. It makes an easy target for anti-aircraft artillery. When North American aviation gets news of the losses, it steps up its efforts to make the plane more durable. The plane is equipped with armored plates under the windscreen. Some naval Mitchells are equipped to handle a single torpedo, which is mounted below the bomb bay, so that the doors cannot be fully closed with it in position. Only after the release of the weapon can the fuselage be sealed. Less than totally successful with the erratic iron bombs of the day, the B-25s would still on occasion tackle conventional bombing from the safety of high altitude. As the war in the Pacific rages on, the Mitchell's service continues. Wary and war-torn, Mitchells make their way through mission after mission. During raids, the Mitchell is not as big or as fast as its counterpart, the B-26, but it is more liked by its crews. Its bold colors can be clearly seen by Japanese troops as it attacks, to promote group morale and intimidate the enemy. The plane's responsive maneuverability, its ability to sustain damage and still fly, and the fact that the plane was easy to get out of in an emergency make it a favorite of air crews. Its amazing versatility also lends to its popularity. The addition of parachute bombs, with their slow descent, give the low-flying Mitchell time to escape their impact. Skip bombing allows the bomb to bounce off the ground on its way to the target, exploding on its second impact, giving the bomber time to escape the blast. Advancing U.S. troops see the results of these raids in the form of wrecked Japanese aircraft, bizarre and stark monuments to the effectiveness of the B-25 and other Allied attack planes. The Mitchell, even though evolved steadily from the original role, is still very much the same plane as originally submitted to the Defense Department before the U.S. involvement in the war. The North American plant at Inglewood makes its last B-25. The California plant is turned over for construction of the new North American Aviation P-51 Mustang fighter, and later, jet development. The last aircraft to leave the California plant are a batch of 1000 H models. The last one to leave the factory is named Old Bones. It is covered with signatures and messages from the plane's builders and factory workers. It is deployed to action through India and sees service with exactly the same appearance as when it left the plant.
Many B-25s survived the war and returned to the U.S. In the post-war years, many B-25s continued service in a variety of roles. In most cases, the plane's immense firepower was removed, but the planes remained useful, many serving as trainers, transport, and communications vehicles. Surplus missiles were often used as private planes and refitted as executive transports. The Mitchell had been produced in greater numbers than any other Allied twin-engine bomber, and it saw service in more theaters and in the arsenals of more countries than any of its counterparts. Even today, the few still in the air remain a joy to fly, responsive, calm, and forgiving. It's no wonder that it earned itself the title Sweetheart of the Forces.